All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to the We the Collective Fitness podcast, where we talk about health and fitness. And what I wanted to spend time on today is to remove a stigma around exercise that some people believe to be true. So it's not as true as you want it to believe. So, the idea I wanted to go ahead and kind of rip apart today is if you don't sweat during your workout, you didn't have a good workout. And that is not necessarily true. Some of my favorite workouts that I go ahead and do, maybe at most my armpits and my mid back get a little bit damp, but it's not like I'm pouring sweat at all. Some people like if it doesn't look like they went and jumped into a swimming pool and then came back out, like they didn't work hard enough or something like that. But what I hear from that is people will say, well, the high intensity is going to burn more calories. I need to burn more calories. I need to burn more calories. Burning calories is a good thing. If I burn more calories, it's I burn more calories. And though it's true, you do burn a little bit more. It's not all that much. So I found a quick study here, and basically the difference between somebody who's 150 pounds and they go through an hour of high intensity training. So that's high intensity interval training compared to LISS, which is low intensity steady state cardio. So the difference between the two is this. Zone one is like if you're walking down the street and you're talking to your best friend and you can talk forever. I'm sitting here just talking away. Technically, this is zone one because my heart is beating. I'm alive. Great. Zone two is like when you start to get a little bit of a break in the sentence, like when you run the stairs too fast or you realize you're a few steps behind. So somebody holds the door, so you run that couple extra steps and you kind of catch your breath a little bit. It's not overwhelming, but you kind of feel that there's a little bit of a change. That's level two. That's low intensity steady state. That is a great spot to be, right? Just enough to challenge yourself to something, because over time your intensity will increase, but it won't feel like your intensity increases within yourself, right? It'll feel just as hard, but you'll be a little bit more efficient at the movement. Then when you start to get into high intensity, so you'll get to like level three, level four. So level three is 3 words. I usually think you can get 3 words out. You can say, I am great. And then you should feel like you need to really take a breath in. You're not going to be able to describe things. You're not going to be able to do too much beyond that. You're just going to say 2, 3 things and you're out. You're not going to be able to do it as well as you like. And then zone four is cursing and grunts. So you'll end up cursing or making guttural sounds or something like that. So zone three, zone four are more of that high intensity state. Now, if you like training high intensity, if you are a sport forward person, right? You compete in sports, you like playing sports. Let's say you love pickleball, or you or a runner, and you want to go ahead and work on sprints or any of that stuff. HIIT cardio or HIIT styles of that are great for that work, right? For sport specific work that does have the intensity to it. But not all of us play sports. So a regular Joe Schmo looking just for general health and fitness, saying, well, I'm not going to go play, tackle football this afternoon for 7 hours, right? Or any of the work that would involve you needing to be at a very endured level to be able to go through a lot of endurance. You really don't need to do HIIT cardio as much as you like or as much as you need to. So if you're in a spot where you're like, man, I do HIIT cardio because I get extra calorie burn out of it. It's the EPOC, right? It's that post oxygen, consumption rate that's afterwards. It's like, man, it's the afterburn that goes ahead and saves the day. It's actually not that much. So even if you train HIIT or if you train LISS, it doesn't really matter. The afterburn of either is so insignificant that most studies say it's about the same. So training at all is better than nothing, right? So even doing low state steady cardio, and one of my favorite things to do for low state is jog, walk. Walking is awesome. Walking is one of the things that made us apex creatures to begin with. So taking a walk after meals could be really good for digestion to make sure everything settles in there. Again, the blood is pumping, so all the other pieces are trying to fire. It's recognizing now there's new nutrition in the body, so it's going to be all the pieces work really well. So I highly recommend, have lunch, take a walk for 5-10 minutes. It's fantastic for your body, amazing, and then you can go ahead and go do the rest of your training. Now, if you like HIIT style, right, it feels good to beat yourself up like that, then I'm not here to criticize you on that at all. If you like it, but if you hate it, you don't have to do that, because necessarily that EPOC, though true, does not change all that much between HIIT and LISS cardios or workouts, any of that. It's very, very small. So I was looking at a couple of numbers here, and one of the things I found that I thought was kind of interesting is that for a person weighing about 150 pounds, if they go through a high intensity interval training, they're going to burn somewhere between 360 to 450 calories. and they did low state steady cardio during that time frame, they're going to burn 240 to 300. Now it seems like it's lower, right? It's definitely lower, right? The high end of LISS is 300, and the high end of LISS is 300. The low end of HIIT is 360. So I'm burning an extra 60 calories just by going ahead and pushing that intensity. But what I find kind of funny is I go with this 50% less sugar ketchup, right? So I have a lot of ketchup. A regular one is probably about 50, 60 calories. So even a single tablespoon might be enough to go ahead. For this one, it's 15 calories per tablespoon, which is about one of those packets that you'd go ahead and use from takeout. And I think a regular serving for most people is probably about 4 of those packets, and that's about it. So the difference between the two is just not having that ketchup. So it really comes down to more of the nutrition that we have compared to how hard our workouts need to be. If you stay consistent and continue to try and you give yourself that effort, you will improve. Now, the best ways to improve is over time to recognize hypertrophy, basically recognize when the muscle groups are going to be close to failure, if not failing, right? Knowing that, because the body doesn't understand the weight that it's doing. It understands how tough it needs to work, right? It only understands the resistance of it. So it doesn't know that 5 pounds is 5 pounds. Because if I gave you a 1 pound weight and told you to stand with your arm out infinitely, eventually your arm will come down. I've watched full training videos where people were training shoulders doing upright rows. And at the end, they couldn't even pick up their own physical hands anymore. So even with zero weight, right? They were working with 5 pounds, but for sets of like 30 and just squeezing away, picking up, squeezing away. All right. Not even sweating all that much. You can see that they're struggling, but it's not like they're pouring sweat to go ahead and get through it. Now, when we start to compare the HIIT to LISS stuff, I get it. It looks like you're going to do so much better with HIIT. You can get upwards of 450 calories, for an hour of hard training, but the afterburn really isn't as impactful. So again, you could still be upwards of, 200 some odd calories, better off training in this methodology. But low state steady cardio just has you like walking. What if we went ahead and changed it where it was maybe 30 minutes of low state steady cardio, right? You're not trying to blow your heart out of your chest. You're just feeling good. Maybe you have a little extra in your exhales, a little bit more in your inhales. Just maybe it's a little bit tough. And you actually trained to lift heavier and trained yourself to endure additional hypertrophy and find additional progressive overload, because that's the other way to grow is hypertrophy and progressive overload. Over time, it needs to get harder. Volume needs to increase over time. So if you've ever been wondering, it's like, hey, I've been doing HIIT cardio for 10 years now, or 5 years, or 3 years, just pick a number, right? And you're still using the weights that you started with. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, you're going to find some kind of consistency through it, right? You might be able to maintain just by doing that. However, if you're still expecting there to be change, you need to start changing above that. So if you go in and you're like, man, I'm going to go ahead and do my 5 push-ups every single day. Eventually 5 push-ups gets really, really easy. It's not enough of a challenge to allow the musculature to recognize that something has gone wrong, that it has not created any damage within the muscle that needs to then be repaired, because when it repairs stronger. That's how we're built, right? We need to go ahead and let it get close to a spot where it's unable to perform, because the body is smart enough to say, I'm not going to waste resources on things that I don't need to do. And the body itself, we're really good at storing fat. Well, endomorphs are, but that's a story for a different day. So there's 3 types with that. There's ectomorphs, metamorphs, and endomorphs. I'm more of an endomorph. It's really easy for me to put on weight, so my metabolism kind of gets a little bit screwy. So I can go work really hard, and sometimes my metabolism doesn't. It takes a little bit longer for me, right? So my initial take when I start to go through any weight loss, usually it takes a lot longer to get started, and then I have a significant drop after that, right? So my body will kind of catch up to the work that I'm doing. But everybody's different, right? Some people, they go ahead and they start benching, and then, later on that day, they might kind of recognize some changes, or maybe the next day, little stuff that starts to happen. Maybe the weight starts to change really quickly for some people, right? It depends on your genetics, your metabolism, your age, your fitness level, all these things, right? If I go ahead and I'm brand new to working out, I'm going to go ahead and recognize that I'm really, really sore. And even to that one, being sore is not a great indicator of a great workout. I do like I've gotten to the point where maybe I become a bit of a masochist where every once in a while, like I like training to failure and I like the feeling of being sore a little bit. So maybe I am, but I usually don't indicate those as like my best workouts. They're fun. I think they're challenging, but none of the workouts end up being like hard enough where I'm physically unable to perform my task the next day. Right. So if I go have a really heavy leg day, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to go run for a bunch of miles the next day. I might go for a walk instead, or I might do a light jog, or instead of my 3 miles, I'll do a mile and a half because my legs are a little bit beat up. Right. So it's understanding and setting expectations for yourself as you work through it. But that's all I really wanted to go ahead and talk about today. Just keeping it really short and simple, saying you do not have to go ahead and pour sweat to have a good workout. Heart's beating, that's a good thing. And if it's challenged a little tiny bit, it'll do a whole lot. And if we find ourselves enjoying the process of what we're doing, we can stick to it longer. So if it's like, hey, I need to burn a bunch of calories, I would highly recommend taking extra walks, monitoring your food choices to make sure that you're not eating in a surplus, and stay consistent. Do it most of the time. And you're going to find a bunch of success with that one. So if you've been worried about change or you think that this is the only way to change, there is an infinite number of roads. There is not a one set piece that gets everything done for everybody. Everybody evolves a little bit differently. Everybody responds a little bit differently. So again, it can even be the timing of certain things in our day that can create different changes for ourselves. So keep that in mind as you go through your training, and know that you don't have to blow your heart out. You don't have to pour sweat. You don't have to do that hard of a work. But if you stay consistent, monitor your nutrition, you will improve over time. Hypertrophy and progressive overload work. They absolutely work over time, but you have to stick with it. So on that note, good luck.